The line at the Jathera immigration checkpoint stretched across the docking bay, like a multicolored snake of misery. I shuffled forward, squinting under the harsh purple lights that seemed designed specifically to make humans look sickly. My duffel bag cut into my shoulder, loaded with tools I'd need for the energy belt assignment. Standard engineer stuff. Nothing fancy. Just like me. Next, the immigration officer, a Qatari with 6 eyes arranged in a perfect hexagon, didn't look up from his console. Each eye blinked independently in what I'd learned was their version of boredom. I placed my Earthlink ID on the scanner. Milo Gray, Earth Division, Civilian Engineer. I have clearance for the Northern Energy Belt installation. One eye swiveled my way while the others stayed on the screen. Purpose of visit? Contract work. 6 months. Maybe 8 if the plasma conduits need replacing. The officer made a clicking sound with his mandibles. Humans. Always underestimating project timelines. 2 eyes rolled in what I assumed was their equivalent of eye rolling. Baggage contents? Standard tools, personal effects. I patted my duffel. Nothing restricted. We'll be the judge of that. He waved a segmented limb at the security scanner. Place your belongings on the belt and proceed to the secondary checkpoint for physical verification. Great. Secondary screening. Again. Earthlings always got the special treatment. I shuffled toward the next line, joining the collection of galactic misfits, waiting for enhanced scrutiny. The being in front of me had tentacles that kept reaching for the ceiling lights. Behind me, something with crystalline skin hummed at a frequency that made my fillings vibrate. Just another day trying to make a living in a galaxy that viewed humans as the cosmic equivalent of that weird cousin nobody wants to invite to family gatherings, but feels obligated to include. The line moved at the pace of governmental bureaucracy across all known galaxies, painfully slow. I entertained myself by calculating the energy requirements for the shield generators I'd be installing. It was a complex problem involving gravitational variances and solar wind patterns. Numbers were my comfort zone. People, not so much. Especially non-human people with exoskeletons and pheromone-based communication systems. Next! The secondary screening officer had 4 arms and skin that shifted colors, like a mood ring. Currently, she was a bored shade of blue-gray. I stepped forward, placing my ID on the scanner again. That's when everything went sideways. I didn't notice her at first. The female standing in an adjacent line? Humanoid. But definitely not human. Her skin had a faint lavender tint, and intricate patterns that might have been tattoos or natural markings traced across her exposed arms and neck. Her eyes, 3 of them, were the color of earth amber, with vertical pupils that widened as she glanced casually in my direction. Then those eyes locked onto my ID card. Her middle eye dilated to almost a perfect circle. The 2 outer ones narrowed to slits. She went rigid, her mouth forming a perfect O of shock. And then she screamed. Not just any scream. This was the kind of sound that makes every sentient being in a 50-meter radius reach for a weapon, hit the deck, or both. "He's real," she pointed at me, her finger trembling. "The one from my dreams." The security checkpoint froze. Every officer's attention locked onto me like targeting systems. "Miss, please calm down," the officer at my station said, her skin flushing alarming shades of red and orange. "You don't understand," the woman continued, pushing past barriers to approach me. "I've seen him every night since I was a child. His face, his voice." She stared at me with a mixture of awe and terror. "The Echo Protocol. He's part of it. He's Visari." That word, Visari, hit the checkpoint like a bomb. Security officers who had been merely alert now had weapons drawn. The crowd backed away from me as if I'd suddenly burst into flames. "I'm just an engineer," I said, raising my hand slowly. "I'm here to work on the energy belt. I don't know what she's talking about." "Secure him!" The command came from somewhere behind me. I felt rather than saw the security barriers activate, creating a containment field around me. "This is a mistake," I protested, even as the field restricted my movements. I'm Milo Gray. I was born on Earth. I've never even heard of... The Visari project was terminated 63 cycles ago, one of the senior officers said, approaching cautiously. All genetic templates were destroyed under Galactic Covenant Law 447. Check his DNA signature, the woman insisted. She was being restrained now, but her eyes never left my face. He's an Echo, the last one. I've seen him in my dreams for 20 years. Lady, I don't know you, I said, trying to keep my voice level despite the panic rising in my chest. I've never been to this sector before today. Your face, she whispered, her voice carrying despite the chaos. Your voice. You've spoken to me across time. You warned me this day would come. The containment field tightened, limiting my movement further. I could feel sweat beading on my forehead as multiple scanning devices were directed my way. DNA extraction authorized, someone said. I felt a sharp sting on my neck as a sampling device pierced my skin. Hey, I have rights under the Earth Galactic Treaty. Treaty protections are suspended for suspected Visari entities, the officer informed me coldly. Visari biotechnology is classified as a Tier 1 threat to galactic security. I'm human, I'm not... Preliminary scan shows anomalies, one of the technicians reported, studying a floating display I couldn't see from my angle. Genetic markers present in the temporal lobe and limbic structure. I told you! The woman's voice was triumphant now. He's the one from the visions! The security chief approached me. All 6 of his eyes narrowed in suspicion. What is your designation, Echo? My name is Milo Gray, I insisted. I'm a civilian engineer from Earth, born in Chicago. I have family there. I have an apartment. I have a cat named Photon who's probably knocking things off my shelves right now. I was babbling, but couldn't seem to stop myself. I'm not whatever you think I am. Take him to containment level 4, the chief ordered. Full neuroscan and memory extraction. Memory extraction? My voice cracked. That's invasive technology. You can't... And bring the female for questioning, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. I want to know how she recognized an echo signature. As they began to move me toward a secure doorway, the woman called out again. My name is Lisari. Remember that name. You told me you would forget, but that I would remind you when the time came. The last thing I saw before they took me through the doorway was her face. Those 3 amber eyes, filled with absolute certainty. She wasn't afraid. She was relieved. As if she'd been waiting her entire life for this moment. As if she'd been waiting for me. The containment cell they placed me in was clinically white and featureless, except for a single bench that extended from the wall. No visible door. No windows. Just seamless walls that probably contained a dozen different scanning systems, analyzing my every breath. I sat on the bench, trying to control my breathing. This was a mistake, a case of mistaken identity. Once they finished their scans, they'd realize I was just an ordinary human engineer and let me go. With a sincere apology and full compensation for the inconvenience, of course. Yeah, right. I'd heard stories about people who got flagged in alien security systems. Some disappeared for days, others for months. A few never returned at all, becoming cautionary tales whispered among the human expatriate community. But I'd never heard of anyone being mistaken for a Visari, whatever that was. A section of the wall suddenly shimmered and became transparent, revealing a monitoring room beyond. 3 officials stood watching me. A Qatari security chief, a tall humanoid with metallic skin, and a smaller being in what appeared to be a medical uniform. Subject appears to be in a standard state of human distress, the medical officer observed, speaking into a recording device. Elevated heart rate, cortisol levels consistent with acute stress response. I can hear you, I called out. And yes, being wrongfully detained tends to stress humans out. It's a quirk of our species. The medical officer tilted his head. Subject displays typical human defensive humor. Noted. The security chief stepped closer to the transparent section. State your full designation. Milo Thomas Gray, born June 17, 2184, Chicago North Medical Center, Earth. Employee ID ERT78291. I'm a Class II certified plasma engineer specializing in gravitational shield technology. I rattled off my credentials, hoping something would trigger a recognition that I was just a boring human doing a boring job. What is your knowledge of the Vizari project? The metallic-skinned official asked. Zero. Nothing. Never heard of it until that woman, Lisari, started screaming about it. I leaned forward. Look, can someone please explain what's happening? What's an echo? What's Visari? Why am I being treated like I'm dangerous? The three officials exchanged glances. Then the medical officer tapped something on a control panel. The transparent section reverted to solid wall, cutting off my view of them. Hey! I stood up, then sat back down, knowing there was nowhere to go. At least tell me what's going on. Silence answered me. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to think logically. What had that woman seen when she looked at my ID? It was a standard Earthlink card with my photo, name, and credentials. Nothing special about it. And what did she mean about dreams? About seeing me? I'd never met her before in my life. I would have remembered someone with 3 amber eyes and lavender skin. Time passed with excruciating slowness. I tried counting seconds, then gave up around 3600 when I realized an hour had passed with no further contact. I stretched out on the bench, staring at the featureless ceiling, running calculations in my head to stay sane. I must have dozed off because I jerked awake at the sound of the wall shimmering again. This time, it didn't just become transparent. It disappeared entirely, creating an opening through which 2 security officers entered, followed by a figure I recognized. Lisari. Up close. She was taller than I'd initially thought, standing at least a head above me. Her lavender skin had subtle variations in tone that created those patterns I'd noticed earlier. Not tattoos, but natural markings that swirled across her skin like abstract art. Her 3 eyes studied me with uncomfortable intensity. Leave us, she said to the guards. Protocol requires, one began. I've been granted special dispensation by the High Council, she interrupted. You may monitor from outside, but I require privacy for this conversation. The guards exchanged glances, then reluctantly stepped back through the opening. The wall reappeared, though I noticed it maintained a slight transparency. They were still watching. Lisari stood perfectly still, her gaze never leaving my face. There was something unsettling about the way she looked at me, like she was seeing someone else, superimposed over my features. You really don't remember, do you? She finally said. Remember what? I've never met you before. I stood up, keeping my distance. Look, I don't know why you think I'm this echo person, but I'm just a human engineer. There's been a mistake. No mistake. She stepped closer. I've seen your face in my dreams since I was a child, exactly as you are now. Same eyes, same voice. She tilted her head. Though in my dreams, you speak our language perfectly. I only know Standard Galactic Common, and I'm not even great at that. I shrugged helplessly. I think you've confused me with someone else. The genetic scan confirmed anomalies, she said quietly. They wouldn't have detained you otherwise. Anomalies could mean anything. Maybe I've got some weird human mutation. Maybe the scanner's calibrated wrong for Earth humans. It doesn't make me this, what did you call it? Echo? An echo is a genetic template carrying embedded memory strands, she explained, her voice taking on a formal quality, as if reciting something memorized long ago. The Visari created them during the final conflict as a way to preserve their greatest minds and warriors. When defeat seemed inevitable, they scattered these templates across the galaxy, encoded with incompatible species. I stared at her. You think I'm some kind of alien sleeper agent? Not an agent. A vessel. She reached toward me, then seemed to think better of it and lowered her hand. The memories and knowledge of a Visari commander named Elian Thar were encoded into a genetic sequence and hidden within a compatible bloodline. Human DNA proved most receptive to the process. That's insane, I said. But something cold settled in my stomach. If that were true, wouldn't I, remember being this alien commander? The memories are suppressed until activated. It's a failsafe to allow the vessel to develop normally within their host culture. Her 3 eyes blinked in sequence. But sometimes, fragments leak through. Dreams, instincts, skills you can't explain. I thought about how easily I'd always understood complex spatial relationships and energy flows, abilities that had made me a natural engineer despite struggling in other academic areas. Just talent. I'd always thought. Nothing supernatural about it. And you've dreamed about me? I asked cautiously. Not about you. With you. Her middle eye widened. My mother was one of the last visions, seers who could connect with the Echo Protocol. Before she was killed, she established a link between my developing mind and the dormant consciousness within the genetic line that would eventually produce you. Killed? I latched onto the word. Who killed her? The Purity faction. Her voice hardened. They believe all Visari influence must be eradicated from the galaxy. They've hunted down and destroyed almost all traces of Visari technology and genetic material. She looked directly at me. You may be the last Echo in existence. I sat back down on the bench, my legs suddenly unsteady. This is crazy. I'm Milo Gray. I was born on Earth to human parents. I have memories of growing up in Chicago. I went to engineering school. I have friends. A life. I broke off, feeling strangely dizzy. I'm not some alien commander in disguise. Not in disguise. Lissari corrected gently. The vessel, you, is real. Milo Gray exists. But you carry something more within you. Something that could change the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. What could possibly... The wall shimmered again, and the security chief entered, accompanied by another official I hadn't seen before. This one wore elaborate robes and had skin so pale it was almost translucent, with visible veins of brilliant blue beneath the surface. Lissari of House Thalen, the robed official said, his voice melodic but cold. Your intervention is no longer required or welcomed. Lissari straightened, her posture shifting to one of formal dignity. Overseer Vectar, the Council granted me right of first communication with the Echo. The Council has been overruled. Vectar's thin lips curved in what might have been a smile on a human face, but looked predatory on his. The Purity Concordat has invoked Section 12 of the Visari Containment Protocol. This entity falls under our jurisdiction now. I saw alarm flash across Lissari's features. You can't. He hasn't been properly identified. The verification process will be conducted at our facility. Vectar turned his attention to me, his eyes like chips of ice. The entity will be transferred immediately. I'm not an entity, I protested. I'm a human citizen with rights under the Earth Galactic Treaty. If you are merely human, you have nothing to fear, Vectar said smoothly. Our verification will confirm that, and you'll be released with our apologies. His smile widened. But, if you are an Echo, well, the Purity Concordat has clear protocols for such abominations. Lissari stepped between us. I invoke the right of cultural witness. As a registered Vision bloodline, I have the authority to observe all procedures involving suspected Echo protocols. Vectar's expression hardened. Your bloodline was stripped of official recognition after your mother's unfortunate involvement with seditious elements. My mother was murdered by your Concordat, Lissari said, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. And the ruling clearing our name is still in effect, regardless of your attempts to bury it in bureaucracy. The tension between them was palpable. I had the distinct impression I was watching the continuation of a conflict that had been brewing long before I entered the picture. "Fine," Vectar finally said. "You may observe the initial verification. After that, your presence will be at my discretion." He gestured to the security officers. "Prepare the entity for transport." "Wait," I said as one of the officers approached with what looked like restraints. "Where are you taking me?" "To the archives," Vectar answered. "Where we keep the remnants of a forgotten era. It seems appropriate, don't you think? To return an echo to the place where the last whispers of its kind are stored." Something about his words sent a chill down my spine. Not fear, exactly. Something deeper. Something like recognition. The transport to the archives was a blur of security checkpoints and sterile corridors. They'd fitted me with restraints that limited my movement and monitored my vital signs. The bands cool against my wrists. Lissari had been permitted to accompany us, but was kept at a distance, flanked by her own security detail. We eventually boarded a sleek vessel that cut through Jathera's stratosphere and into open space. Through a viewport, I caught glimpses of the planet below, a swirling mass of purples and blues with sprawling metropolitan areas that glittered like embedded jewels. "First time seeing Jathera from orbit?" One of the guards noticed my attention. "First time seeing anything from orbit that isn't Earth or the lunar colonies," I admitted. "Claim to be a regular space traveler, don't you?" Vectar commented from across the cabin. "Yet you gawk like a primitive seeing fire for the first time." "I usually travel in standard transport vessels," I replied. "No windows, just cramped quarters and bad food." Vectar's eyes narrowed. "An echo would know 1,000 worlds, have memories of countless planetary systems. Then, I guess that's another point in favor of me not being one." Vectar turned away, but not before I caught a flicker of doubt cross his features. Good. Let him question his certainty. The journey lasted approximately 3 hours. I spent most of it trying to catch Lissari's eye, hoping for some clue about what awaited me. But she remained in deep conversation with one of her escorts, their voices too low to hear. The vessel eventually slowed, and through the viewport, I saw our destination, a massive structure floating in open space, unattached to any planet or station. It resembled a series of interconnected rings surrounding a central sphere, the entire complex glittering with lights against the darkness of space. "The archives," Vectar announced, noting my interest. "The most comprehensive collection of Visari artifacts and data in the known galaxy. Most of it inert, harmless, museum pieces." His cold eyes fixed on me. "We'll soon discover if you belong in the collection." The vessel docked with one of the outer rings. As we disembarked, I was struck by the architecture, flowing lines and surfaces that seemed to shift subtly as we passed, creating an unsettling sense of movement in my peripheral vision. "This facility predates the final conflict," Lissari said quietly, suddenly beside me. It was a Visari research station, repurposed after their defeat. "You seem to know a lot about ancient history," I observed. "My mother made sure I understood our past." A shadow crossed her face. She believed knowledge was the only defense against those who would rewrite history to suit their purposes. Vectar led our procession through a series of security checkpoints, each more stringent than the last. The deeper we went into the facility, the more the architecture changed, becoming less fluid, more angular and imposing. The lighting shifted from standard illumination to a soft blue glow that emanated from the walls themselves. Finally, we reached a circular chamber with a raised platform at its center. Around the platform stood various devices I didn't recognize, though their purpose seemed ominous. "The verification chamber," Vectar announced with undisguised satisfaction, "where we separate truth from flesh." "That device is antiquated," Lissari protested, pointing to the central platform. It hasn't been properly calibrated for human physiology. It could cause permanent neural damage. Your concern is noted, Vectar said dismissively. But the extractor is the only instrument capable of detecting the embedded memory patterns of an echo. He gestured to the guards. Secure him to the platform. As they led me forward, I felt a growing sense of panic. Wait, you can't just hook me up to some ancient alien machine. I'm telling you, I'm human. Then you have nothing to fear. Vectar repeated his earlier assurance, though the smile accompanying it did nothing to reassure me. They positioned me on the platform, securing my restraints to attachment points that rose from the surface. The material beneath me was cool and slightly yielding, conforming partially to my body. Lysari approached, stopping just short of the platform. Milo, she said urgently, if there's anything within you, any fragment of memory or knowledge, now is the time to acknowledge it. The extractor will find it regardless, but the process will be less traumatic if you don't resist. I'm not resisting anything because there's nothing to find, I insisted, though my voice lacked conviction. The weight of everything, the certainty in Lysari's eyes, the clinical confidence of Vectar's preparations, was beginning to shake my own sense of identity. What if they were right? What if I carried something within me I didn't understand? A technician approached, holding what appeared to be a circlet made of the same shifting material as the walls. As he placed it on my head, I felt a cool sensation spread across my scalp. Calibrating for human neural patterns, the technician announced. Subject displays typical limbic activity, consistent with fear response. Proceed with the extraction sequence, Vectar ordered. The technician moved to a console and began activating various controls. The platform beneath me hummed to life, vibrations traveling up through my body. The circlet tightened slightly against my temples. Initial scan commencing, the technician said, mapping neural pathways and memory centers. I closed my eyes, trying to control my breathing. Just stay calm. This will all be over soon, and they'll realize their mistake. The humming intensified. I felt a strange pressure building inside my skull. Not painful, but distinctly uncomfortable. Colors swirled behind my closed eyelids, patterns I couldn't identify. Interesting, the technician murmured. There appears to be an encrypted neural signature in the subject's temporal lobe. Attempting to isolate? The pressure increased, focusing on a specific point behind my left temple. Now there was pain, a sharp, stabbing sensation that made me gasp. Careful, Lysari warned. You're pushing too hard. I know what I'm doing, the technician snapped. The encryption is complex. It requires... Whatever he was about to say was lost as the pain suddenly exploded into something beyond agony. My entire body went rigid, my back arching against the restraints. And then, images, sounds, sensations, a torrent of them, flooding my consciousness. A battlefield stretching to the horizon, littered with technology I didn't recognize. The sensation of giving orders in a language I'd never spoken. The weight of responsibility for thousands of lives. The bitter taste of defeat. A desperate plan, whispered among the last survivors of a dying civilization. Echo protocol activated, a voice said. My voice, but not my voice. Deeper, resonant with authority. Genetic dispersal initiated. May our knowledge find fertile ground among the stars. A face appeared in the maelstrom of memories. A woman with features similar to Lysari's, but older, wiser. She held a child in her arms, a child with 3 amber eyes that looked directly at me with impossible recognition. Remember us, the woman said. Remember your promise. The memory fractured, splintering into 1,000 pieces that scattered through my mind like shrapnel. I became aware of screaming, my screaming. Shut it down! Lysari's voice cut through the chaos. You're killing him! We're receiving data, Vectar countered. Continue the extraction. The neural patterns are destabilizing, the technician warned. If we continue... I said continue. The pressure in my head built to an impossible level. I was certain my skull would explode from the force of it. The memories, or hallucinations, or whatever they were, became a whirlwind of fragmented images too fast to process. And then, abruptly, everything stopped. The pressure vanished, the images ceased, the pain receded to a dull throb. I opened my eyes to see Lisari standing at the control console, her hand on an emergency shutdown switch. The technician lay unconscious nearby. Vektar was shouting orders to security personnel, who seemed uncertain whether to approach. "What have you done?" Vektar demanded, his face contorted with rage. "Prevented you from destroying the very thing you claim to be investigating," Lisari replied calmly. She turned to me, her expression gentle but urgent. "Milo, can you hear me?" I tried to respond, but my mouth wouldn't form words. My entire body felt numb, disconnected. "The extraction was incomplete," Vektar snarled. "We had almost isolated the embedded memory strand." "You nearly killed him," Lisari countered, "and destroyed any data you might have recovered in the process." She moved to the platform and began releasing my restraints. "He needs medical attention." "Step away from the subject," one of the security officers ordered, raising a weapon. Lisari ignored him, continuing to work on my restraints. "Milo, I need you to focus. Can you stand?" I managed a small nod, though I wasn't entirely confident in my assessment. The room seemed to be tilting at odd angles, and after images of the memories, or visions, still flickered at the edges of my perception. As the last restraint fell away, Lisari helped me to a sitting position. The movement sent a fresh wave of pain through my skull, but it was manageable now. "The subject is to remain secured." Vektar's voice had risen to a near shriek. "Guards, restrain them both." The security personnel exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. One of them finally stepped forward, weapons still raised. "Lady Lisari, please step away from the human. We don't want to harm either of you, but we have our orders." "Your orders would have resulted in his death," Lisari replied. "The extraction protocol was never meant to be used on a partially activated echo. It requires careful calibration and gradual power increases." She fixed Vektar with an accusing stare. "Which you knew." Vektar's expression shifted, the rage giving way to something colder, more calculated. "You accuse me of deliberate sabotage? Based on what evidence?" "Based on the extraction parameters I observed on the console. You weren't trying to verify his identity. You were attempting to destroy the embedded memories while preserving the physical vessel." Lisari's voice hardened. "A clear violation of the covenant of preservation." "Ridiculous accusations from the daughter of a traitor," Vektar scoffed. "Guards, secure them both. The council will determine the truth of this matter." The guard took another step forward, but hesitated when Lisari raised her hand. "Before you follow that order," she said, "you should know that I activated the archive's emergency protocols when I shut down the extractor. The entire incident has been recorded and transmitted to the High Council's Security Division." Her three eyes narrowed. "Including Overseer Vektar's disregard for standard safety procedures." The guard lowered his weapon slightly, uncertainty clear in his posture. Vektar's face had gone very still. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Lisari helped me to my feet, supporting me as my legs threatened to buckle. "Would you like to explain to the council why you attempted to destroy an invaluable historical artifact, one that might contain the last intact memories of Visari culture?" "The Purity Concordat has jurisdiction over verified echo entities," Lisari interrupted. "Not suspected ones. The verification process must be completed according to established protocols before your authority applies." She took a step toward the chamber exit, still supporting my weight. "And since the equipment here has been compromised, we'll need to transfer to a secondary facility for proper analysis." I was impressed by her bluff, if it was a bluff. The confidence in her voice was absolute. Vektar must have heard it too, because he signaled the guards to stand down. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "The Concordat will not allow an active echo to remain at large. Not after what happened last time." "Last time?" I managed to ask, my voice rough from screaming. Vektar's cold eyes fixed on me. "The last echo that awoke nearly destroyed an entire system before it was contained. Your kind are weapons, Milo Gray, living weapons with the capacity for incalculable destruction." His thin lips curved in a mirthless smile. "But perhaps you already know that. Perhaps those memories are already surfacing." The images I'd experienced during the extraction flashed through my mind again. Battlefields, commands given, decisions that cost lives. A heaviness settled in my chest. "We're leaving," Lissari said firmly, guiding me toward the exit. "A medical evaluation team will meet us in the secondary docking bay." "You may leave the archives," Vektar conceded, "but you will not leave the jurisdiction of the Concordat. I've already dispatched security teams to all potential departure points." Lissari didn't respond, focusing instead on helping me navigate the corridor outside the chamber. Once we were out of earshot, she leaned closer. "Can you walk on your own?" she whispered. "I think so," I murmured back. "Where are we really going?" "To find answers." Her expression was grim. "Before Vektar finds a way to destroy them permanently." The secondary docking bay was smaller than the main bay where we'd arrived, and notably empty of the medical team Lissari had mentioned. Instead, a single transport vessel waited, its engines already humming with pre-launch preparations. "I thought you said," I began. "I lied," Lissari interrupted, helping me toward the vessel. "Vektar isn't the only one with resources in the archives. I have friends here." As if on cue, the vessel's hatch opened to reveal a slender figure, with iridescent scales instead of skin and eyes that seemed to contain miniature galaxies. "You're late," the figure said, their voice melodic and genderless. "We encountered complications," Lissari replied, guiding me up the ramp into the vessel. "Milo, this is Zenith, curator of the Forbidden Archives and an old friend of my mother's." Zenith's galaxy eyes studied me with intense curiosity. "So this is the echo she foresaw. Interesting. I expected someone more imposing." "Thanks," I muttered, collapsing into a seat as my legs finally gave out. "Sorry to disappoint." "Oh, I'm not disappointed," Zenith said with a rippling laugh that sent light dancing across their scales. "Quite the contrary. The unassuming vessels often contain the most remarkable contents." "I'm not a vessel," I insisted, though the protest felt hollow after what I'd experienced in the extraction chamber. "I'm just me. For now, perhaps." Zenith moved to the vessel's controls. "But the memories are beginning to surface, aren't they? Little fragments pushing through the barriers of your consciousness." I didn't answer, partly because speaking still required more effort than I could muster, but mostly because I couldn't deny it. The visions from the extractor hadn't faded. If anything, they were becoming clearer, more insistent, like memories struggling to be recognized. "We need to reach the Echo Shrine before Vektar realizes where we've gone," Lissari said, securing herself in the seat beside me. "Can you bypass the Archive's security protocols?" "Already done," Zenith replied, their fingers dancing across the control interface. "I've programmed a false flight path to the medical facility on Jathera's moon. It should give us enough time to reach the outer system before they realize the deception." The vessel hummed to life, lifting smoothly from the docking bay floor. Through a viewport, I watched as the massive structure of the archives fell away beneath us, its interconnected rings glittering against the backdrop of space. "I think it's time someone explained exactly what's going on," I said, my voice stronger now as the initial shock began to wear off. "What is an echo, really? And why is Vektar so determined to destroy me, or it, or whatever is inside my head?" Lissari exchanged glances with Zenith, then sighed. "The full explanation is Complicated, but I'll try to give you the essential version. She turned in her seat to face me directly. The Visari were once the dominant civilization in this sector of the galaxy. Their technology, their understanding of consciousness and memory, it was beyond anything we've achieved since. Like the extractor, I asked, rubbing my temples at the memory. The extractor is a crude adaptation of Visari technology, barely functional compared to their original designs, Zenith said over their shoulder. Most of their most advanced creations were destroyed during the final conflict. Which was a war, Lissari continued. The Visari had become not exactly tyrannical, but certainly dominant. Many species chafed under their influence. An alliance formed to challenge them. The conflict lasted for decades, devastating hundreds of worlds. The Visari were losing, Zenith added. Their numbers dwindling, their territories falling. In desperation, they created the Echo Protocol, a way to preserve their greatest minds, their leaders, their scientists. They encoded complete memory patterns into genetic sequences and dispersed them across the galaxy, hidden within compatible species. Hidden in humans, I said, the pieces beginning to fall into place. Lissari nodded. Human DNA proved most receptive to the process. Your species was relatively unknown then, just beginning to venture beyond your solar system. The perfect hiding place. These genetic sequences were designed to remain dormant for generations. Zenith continued. Only activating when specific conditions were met. Conditions the Visari believed would indicate a time when their knowledge and abilities would be needed again. And those conditions have been met? I asked. Lysari's three eyes focused on me with uncomfortable intensity. We believe so. The recent disruptions in the energy belt around Jathera's star system, they're not natural. Something is destabilizing the fabric of spacetime in this sector. Something that matches patterns described in ancient Visari texts about the collapse. The what now? A theoretical catastrophe the Visari had been working to prevent before their civilization fell. Zenith explained. Their records were fragmented, but they spoke of a cyclic event, a thinning of the barriers between realities that could lead to total system failure, if not contained. I rubbed my forehead, trying to process everything. And you think I, or this echo inside me, knows how to prevent this collapse? We believe the echo within you belongs to Elianthar, Lissari said quietly. He was one of the last Visari commanders, but also their leading scientist on interdimensional physics. He created the containment system that still protects this sector from gravitational anomalies. The same system you were sent to help maintain, Zenith added with a knowing look. Not coincidence, I think. That stopped me short. My assignment to the energy belt had come through standard channels, a routine contract from the Galactic Engineering Corps. At least, that's what I'd thought. Someone arranged for me to be here? I asked, a chill running down my spine. Who? That, Lissari said grimly, is one of many questions we hope to answer at the Echo Shrine. And where exactly is this shrine? On a moon orbiting the gas giant Theros, at the edge of this system. Lissari checked the navigation display. About 6 hours from our current position, assuming we don't encounter any concordant patrols. Assuming, I repeated skeptically. And if we do? Then we improvise, Zenith said cheerfully. A specialty of mine. Great, I muttered, leaning back in my seat. The pounding in my head had subsided to a dull ache, but the strange memories, if that's what they were, continued to flicker through my mind like a malfunctioning hologram. Fragments of battles, of laboratories, of desperate last-minute plans. And increasingly, fragments of a face, Lissari's face, but not quite, older, wiser, with an expression of fierce determination. I glanced at Lissari, studying her features more carefully now. The resemblance to the woman in the visions was unmistakable. The woman in my visions, I said hesitantly. She looks like you. Lysari's expression softened. My mother, Alara. She was a vision, one of the few beings who could communicate with dormant echoes across space and time. A shadow crossed her face. The Purity Concordat killed her for it when I was 12 years old. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate. She knew it was coming, Lysari continued, her voice distant. She told me that her death was necessary, that it would set certain events in motion that couldn't be altered. Her 3 eyes fixed on me again. Events that would eventually lead you here. The implications of that statement hung in the air between us. Had my entire life, my career choices, my decision to accept the assignment on Jathera, all been influenced by some alien consciousness buried in my DNA? The thought was deeply unsettling. I don't believe in predestination, I said finally. Echo or no echo, I make my own choices. Of course you do, Zenith called from the pilot's seat. That's what makes you valuable. An echo that blindly follows programming is just another computer. An echo that questions, that chooses, that's something else entirely. But if these memories are real, if I really am carrying the consciousness of this Elianthar person, what happens to me? To Milo Gray? The question had been forming since the extraction chamber, but I'd been afraid to voice it until now. Do I disappear? Lysari's expression turned troubled. I don't know, she admitted. The records about fully activated echoes are incomplete. Some suggest a merging of consciousness, others a more complete transformation. Complete transformation, I repeated flatly. You mean Milo Gray ceases to exist? Not necessarily, Zenith interjected. Consciousness is not so easily defined or contained. Perhaps Elianthar becomes part of you, rather than replacing you. Or perhaps neither of you will exist as you once did, Lysari added softly. Something new might emerge, neither fully Milo, nor fully Elianthar, but a unique being with aspects of both. None of those options sounded particularly appealing. I'd spent 32 years building my identity, my life. The thought of losing that, of becoming someone else, filled me with a visceral dread. Yet, even as that dread formed, another part of my mind, a part that felt increasingly foreign, yet familiar, regarded the situation with calm acceptance, as if this transformation had always been inevitable, as if it had been planned from the beginning. We're clearing the archive's security perimeter, Zenith announced, interrupting my troubled thoughts. Setting course for Theros. You should rest, Lysari told me, her voice gentle. The extraction process takes a heavy toll, even when performed correctly. There are quarters in the rear compartment where you can lie down. Rest sounded good. My body felt like it had been put through a high-gravity centrifuge, and my mind wasn't faring much better. But I was also afraid of what might happen if I closed my eyes, what other memories might surface in dreams. I'm fine here, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Lysari studied me for a moment, then nodded. As you wish. But if you change your mind, I'll let you know. I attempted a smile that probably came out as more of a grimace. So, 6 hours to this shrine. What exactly are we expecting to find there? Answers, hopefully, Lysari replied. The shrine contains one of the last intact Visari memory repositories, a device that can interact directly with echo patterns. Another extraction machine? I asked warily. No, nothing like that. The memory catalyst doesn't extract, it resonates, harmonizes with the patterns already present in your mind. Lysari's expression turned solemn. If there's a way to access the echo consciousness without harming you, the shrine is our best chance of finding it. And if there isn't? She didn't answer immediately, her 3 eyes shifting to look out the viewport at the stars streaming past. Then we face a choice, she finally said. One I hope we won't have to make. I didn't press for clarification. Some things were better left unspoken, At least for now. Instead, I turned my attention to the viewport, watching the distant stars, and trying to ignore the increasing sense that I was no longer alone in my own mind. Despite my determination to stay awake, exhaustion eventually claimed me. I drifted in and out of consciousness as the vessel sped through space, each period of sleep bringing more fragmented visions, battles fought long ago, scientific discoveries, desperate plans made in the shadow of impending defeat. And always, that face, Alara, Lissari's mother. In my dreams or memories, she looked at me with a mixture of respect and something deeper, more personal, something that made the fragments of Allianthar within me ache with loss. I awoke fully to Zenith's voice, announcing our approach to Theros. The massive gas giant filled the viewport, its swirling atmosphere a mesmerizing pattern of amber and deep blue. Several moons orbited the planet, ranging from tiny specks to substantial worlds. "Which one is it?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "There." Lissari pointed to a small, irregular moon that appeared to be little more than a captured asteroid. Theros Minor, uninhabited except for the shrine and its automated systems. And hopefully unmonitored, Zenith added. Though I wouldn't count on that lasting long. The Concordat has resources throughout this system. "How much time do you think we have?" Lissari asked. Zenith's scales rippled in what I was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of a shrug. "Hours. Perhaps. Less if Vectar managed to track our actual course, rather than the false trajectory I programmed." "Then we'd better make them count," Lissari said grimly. The vessel descended toward the small moon, its surface a cratered landscape of dusty gray rock. As we drew closer, I noticed an unusual formation among the craters, a structure that didn't appear natural. It resembled a broken tower, as if a much taller building had been shattered, leaving only its base and a jagged upper section. "The broken tower," Lissari said, noting my interest. "One of the last Visari structures left intact after the final conflict. Most believe it's just a ruin. Its technology's long defunct. But it's not, I guessed. The outer structure is damaged. Yes. But the core systems remain operational, shielded by technologies we still don't fully understand." She exchanged a glance with Zenith. "My mother was one of the few who knew how to access them. And she passed that knowledge to you." I said, "Not a question." Lissari nodded. "Before she died, she made sure I understood the protocols. She said I would need them when you arrived." There it was again. That unsettling sense that my entire existence had been leading to this moment. That choices I thought I'd made freely had been guided by invisible hands. No, I pushed the thought away. Whatever was happening, whatever I might be carrying inside me, I was still Milo Gray. My choices were my own. Zenith guided the vessel to a landing pad, half concealed among the rubble surrounding the tower. As the engines powered down, a strange silence settled over us, the profound quiet of a world without atmosphere. "We'll need environmental suits," Zenith said, rising from the pilot's seat. "The shrine maintains a habitable environment inside, but the journey from here requires protection." They led us to a storage compartment where 3 environmental suits waited. I recognized the human-compatible design of one of them, standard issue for off-world work in hostile environments. The other 2 had been modified for their respective species' anatomies. "You came prepared," I observed as I began fitting the suit over my clothes. "We've been preparing for this possibility for years," Lissari replied, her voice slightly muffled as she secured her helmet. "Ever since my mother's last vision before her death." "Which was?" I asked. She paused, her 3 eyes meeting mine through her visor. "She saw you, standing before the catalyst, making a choice that would determine the fate of this entire sector." "No pressure," I muttered, sealing my own helmet. "Pressure is precisely what we need to worry about," Zenith quipped, their scales shifting to match the color of their suit in a remarkable display of adaptive camouflage. Or lack thereof. Stay close and follow the marked path. The gravity here is minimal, and it's easy to drift off course. We exited the vessel into the airless environment of Theros Minor. The silence was absolute now, broken only by the sound of my own breathing inside the helmet. The low gravity made each step feel like I might float away, requiring a careful, deliberate gait to maintain contact with the surface. Lysari took the lead, activating a guide beacon that projected a faint blue path toward the broken tower. We followed in single file, navigating around rubble and across small craters. Despite the urgency of our situation, I couldn't help but marvel at the view, the massive form of Theros dominating the sky above us, the distant sun casting long shadows across the moon's barren landscape. As we approached the tower, I began to notice details that weren't visible from a distance. What had appeared to be simple stone was actually a material I couldn't identify, somewhere between metal and crystal, with subtle patterns that shifted as we moved past, like oil on water. Visari architecture responds to consciousness, Lysari explained, noticing my fascination. The patterns you see are reflections of our thoughts and emotions. Practical application of quantum observer theory. I found myself saying, the words coming unbidden. The building material exists in a state of quantum flux until observed, allowing it to adapt to the needs and perceptions of its inhabitants. Lysari and Zenith both stopped, turning to look at me. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. Those were almost exactly Elianthar's words, Lysari said quietly. From one of his final recorded lectures before the fall, a chill ran through me despite the suit's temperature regulation. I don't know where that came from. It came from him, Zenith said simply. The barriers are thinning. His knowledge is beginning to bleed through. We continued in silence after that, reaching the base of the tower where a sealed doorway awaited. Unlike the fluid architecture of the outer walls, this entrance was solid and unyielding, marked with symbols I didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. Warning, sanctuary, knowledge. I read aloud, then frowned. I can't read that script. How am I translating it? You're not, Lysari said. He is. She approached the doorway and placed her palm against a specific symbol, one that seemed to pulse slightly at her touch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire doorway began to reconfigure, the material flowing like liquid to create an opening just large enough for us to pass through single file. The tower recognizes genetic patterns associated with authorized users, Lysari explained. My mother's bloodline carries the access signature. We entered a small antechamber that sealed behind us with the same fluid motion. Lights activated along the walls, illuminating a space that was surprisingly intact given the ruined appearance of the tower's exterior. The airlock will equalize pressure and atmosphere, Zenith said, their voice now transmitted directly through our helmet comms. We should be able to remove our suits once the process is complete. A soft humming filled the chamber as various systems activated. Displays illuminated along the walls, showing readings in the same script I'd somehow translated outside. Environmental data, system status, security protocols, all streaming past too quickly to fully comprehend. After several minutes, a chime sounded, and the inner doorway dissolved just as the outer one had. We can remove our helmets now, Lysari said, already unsealing hers. The shrine maintains Earth-standard atmosphere for compatibility with echo vessels. I hesitated, then followed suit, taking a cautious breath of the shrine's air. It was surprisingly fresh, with a slight sweetness I couldn't identify. Trace elements of catalytic compounds, that other voice in my head supplied, designed to enhance neural plasticity and memory retrieval. I pushed the thought away, focusing on our surroundings as we moved through the inner doorway into the heart of the broken tower. The central chamber was breathtaking. Unlike the utilitarian antechamber, this space soared upward toward the shattered top of the tower, where force fields contained the atmosphere while allowing a view of space beyond. The walls were lined with the same shifting material as the exterior, but here the patterns were more deliberate, forming intricate designs that seemed to tell a story, a history I could almost, but not quite, understand. At the center of the chamber stood a crystalline structure, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It resembled a tree made of light, its trunk a column of pulsing energy, its branches extending outward in fractal patterns that seemed to reach toward the stars, visible through the broken ceiling. "The memory catalyst," Lissari said reverently. "One of the last functioning Visari consciousness interfaces in existence." "It's beautiful," I murmured, drawn toward it almost against my will. "And dangerous," Zenith cautioned, moving to a console near the base of the crystal tree. "In its active state, it can rewrite neural patterns as easily as it can read them. We must approach with caution." "What exactly is the plan here?" I asked, forcing myself to look away from the hypnotic patterns of the catalyst. "How is this thing supposed to help us?" "The catalyst can interface directly with echo patterns," Lissari explained. "It can help us determine exactly what you're carrying, what memories, what knowledge, and potentially how to access them without losing you in the process." "That's the part I'm most interested in," I said dryly. "The not losing me part." "The process requires calibration," Zenith said, their fingers dancing across the console's interface. "The catalyst needs to recognize your specific neural signature before attempting any deeper connection." "And how does it do that?" Lissari pointed to a circular platform at the base of the crystal tree. "You'll need to stand there. The catalyst will scan your neural patterns. A passive process. Nothing like the extraction you experienced." I eyed the platform warily. "You're sure about that? Because I'm not eager for a repeat performance." The Visari understood consciousness transfer better than any civilization before or since, Zenith assured me. The catalyst was designed for echo integration, to gently awaken dormant memories, not forcibly extract them. "That's somewhat reassuring," I admitted. "But what happens after it scans me? What then?" Lissari and Zenith exchanged glances. "That depends on what the catalyst finds," Lissari finally said. "On how deeply the echo patterns are integrated with your own consciousness. On what choices are available." There was that word again, choice, as if there was a decision coming that I wasn't yet prepared to make. "All right," I said after a moment's consideration. "Let's do this, before Vector and his purity friends catch up to us." I approached the platform cautiously, up close. The crystal tree was even more mesmerizing, light pulsing through its structure in complex rhythms that seemed almost musical, as if the energy itself was singing. I stepped onto the platform, half expecting some immediate reaction. Nothing happened. "Now what?" I asked. "The system needs activation," Lissari said, moving to stand beside Zenith at the console. "An authentication code that—" She was interrupted by a sudden shift in the crystal tree's light patterns. The pulsing intensified, focusing into a beam that swept across my body from head to toe. "That's not supposed to happen," Zenith said, their scales rippling with alarm. "The catalyst is activating on its own." "Is that bad?" I asked, fighting the urge to step off the platform. Before either could answer, a voice filled the chamber, not spoken aloud, but somehow present in my mind. From the startled expressions of my companions, they heard it too. "Echo pattern recognized," the voice said, its tone neither male nor female, but something beyond such distinctions. "Template, Elian Thar, primary Visari command, designation, protector of the veil." The light from the crystal tree intensified, branches of energy extending toward me like reaching hands. "Initiating resonance sequence," the voice continued. "Prepare for memory integration." "Wait!" Lissari called out, her three eyes wide with alarm. "We haven't established the safety protocols. The human vessel isn't prepared for full integration." The catalyst seemed to pause, the light holding steady around me like a cocoon of energy. "Query: what is the purpose of this activation?" the voice asked. I found my own voice, pushing past the strange buzzing sensation filling my head. "Information," I said firmly. "We need to know what's happening to the energy belt around Jathera. If it's related to this collapse that Alianthar was trying to prevent." Another pause. Longer this time. Then the light shifted, becoming less intense but more focused. "Partial access granted," the voice announced. "Limited memory transfer initiated. Warning: full integration not recommended without proper stabilization protocols." The energy branches retracted slightly, then reformed into a single beam that connected the crystal tree to my forehead. The moment it touched me, the world dissolved. I was no longer in the broken tower. I was elsewhere, everywhere, drifting through a sea of memories that weren't mine, yet felt intimately familiar. I saw Jathera as it had been centuries ago, its surface not yet dominated by sprawling cities, but dotted with elegant structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being built upon it. I saw the construction of the energy belt, not as a simple containment system, but as a complex network designed to stabilize a growing rift in the fabric of reality itself. I saw the war that ended the Vizari civilization, not a simple conflict between species, but a fundamental disagreement about how to address the collapse. The Vizari believed in containment and coexistence with the anomaly. Their enemies advocated for more drastic measures, even at the cost of entire star systems. And I saw her, Ilara, not as Lissari's mother, but as Elianthar's colleague, his confidant, eventually, his partner in both work and life. The memories accelerated, becoming a torrent of information too vast to fully comprehend. Scientific principles beyond current understanding, military strategies spanning multiple dimensions, and most crucially, the truth about the collapse, not a natural phenomenon, but the result of earlier, failed attempts to harness interdimensional energy. Then, abruptly, I was back in the broken tower, gasping for breath as the energy beam retracted into the crystal tree. I stumbled, nearly falling off the platform before Lissari reached me, supporting my weight. "Milo, are you all right?" Her voice seemed to come from very far away. "I saw everything," I managed, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. "The collapse, the war, your mother." I broke off, unsure how to express the complex relationship I'd glimpsed between Alianthar and Ilara. "What about my mother?" Lissari asked, her three eyes intensely focused. Before I could answer, an alarm sounded from Zenith's console. "We have a problem," they announced, their scales flickering with agitation. "Multiple vessels approaching, concordant signatures." "Vectar," Lissari hissed. "How did he find us so quickly?" "The catalyst's activation must have triggered alerts in the Archive's security systems," Zenith theorized. "We have minutes at most before they breach the tower." "We need to complete the process," Lissari insisted, turning back to me. "The catalyst was beginning to stabilize the integration. If we can finish—" "No," I said, the word coming out more forcefully than I'd intended. "No more integration. Not yet." I stepped off the platform, putting distance between myself and the crystal tree. "I need to think, to process what I've already seen." "We don't have time," Lissari argued. "Vectar won't allow a second chance. He'll destroy the echo pattern, and possibly you with it." "Then we leave," I said, moving toward the antechamber where we'd left our suits. "We take what I've learned and go." "And what have you learned?" Zenith asked, their galaxy eyes studying me intently. "What did the catalyst show you?" I hesitated, sorting through the flood of memories and knowledge. "The energy belt is failing," I finally said. The containment system Elianthar designed is breaking down after centuries of operation. If it collapses completely, the rift will expand, consuming this entire sector within days. "Can you fix it?" Lissari asked. Another alarm sounded from the console. "They've landed," Zenith reported grimly. "Multiple units approaching the tower. We're out of time." "Get to the suits," Lissari ordered, already moving. "We need to reach the vessel before they surround the tower." We raced to the antechamber, donning our environmental suits with frantic haste. I could hear the distant sound of energy weapons through the structure of the tower, Vectar's forces attempting to breach the sealed entrance. "The tower's defenses will hold them off temporarily," Lissari said, securing her helmet. "But once they override the access protocols—" "Which they will," Zenith interjected, "given that the archive likely has backup access codes." "We'll be trapped," Lissari finished. "Our only chance is to reach the vessel before they realize we're escaping." "Is there another way out?" I asked. "They'll be watching the main entrance." "There's a maintenance access on the far side," Zenith said. "Designed for drone servicing of the outer structure. It's small, but we should fit." "Lead the way," Lissari said. Zenith guided us to a narrow corridor that curved around the central chamber. The passage was tight, forcing us to move in single file through what felt like the circulatory system of the tower itself. The walls here had the same fluid quality as the rest of the structure, but seemed more active, rippling with energy as we passed. "The tower is responding to the threat," Zenith explained, noticing my attention. "Rerouting power to defensive systems." We reached a small chamber, with what appeared to be a solid wall of the same shifting material as the rest of the structure. "The maintenance access is here," Zenith said, placing their hand against a specific point on the wall. "It will recognize me as archive personnel." The wall rippled, then formed a narrow opening, barely wide enough for us to pass through single file. "Quickly," Zenith urged. "The Concordate forces will have detection equipment that can track our suit signatures once we're outside." We emerged onto the barren surface of Theros Minor, on the opposite side of the tower from where we'd entered. In the distance, I could see several Concordate vessels surrounding our landing site. "They've found our transport," Lissari said grimly. "Not necessarily," Zenith replied. "I programmed it to relocate to secondary coordinates if it detected unauthorized approach. They activated a beacon on their suit. If it's still operational, it should respond to this signal." We waited in tense silence, the bulk of the broken tower concealing us from the Concordate forces for the moment. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than a minute, a response flashed on Zenith's suit display. "It's en route," they announced. "Automated systems are bringing it to us. ETA 3 minutes. "Will we have 3 minutes?" I asked, eyeing the tower nervously. "Once they realize we're not inside—" "The tower's defensive systems will create confusion," Lissari assured me, "and they'll spend precious time searching the central chamber and accessing the catalyst logs." "Which will tell them exactly what we learned," I pointed out. "Not exactly," Zenith said with a ripple of their scales that I was beginning to recognize as their version of a smile. "I initiated a data purge sequence before we left. Standard archive protocol for compromised systems." A distant rumble shook the ground beneath our feet. Through the transparent dome of my helmet, I saw energy discharges dancing across the broken top of the tower. "They're inside," Lissari said tensely. "The tower's internal defenses are engaging." "Which means we have even less time," Zenith noted. "They'll realize quickly that we're no longer there." As if on cue, a small vessel appeared over the horizon, skimming low across the moon's surface toward our position. "Our ride arrives just in time," Zenith said with obvious relief. "Let's not waste the opportunity." The vessel settled onto the dusty surface nearby, its hatch opening invitingly. We hurried toward it, the low gravity making our movements awkward, but swift. We had almost reached the vessel when the first energy blast struck the ground near our position, sending up a plume of moon dust that momentarily blinded me. Through the settling debris, I saw figures in Concordate uniforms emerging from around the tower. weapons raised. "Inside! Now!" Lissari shouted, pushing me toward the waiting hatch. Another blast hit closer, the energy discharge interfering with my suit systems. Warning lights flashed across my helmet display as the environmental controls fluctuated. I stumbled into the vessel, Zenith right behind me. Lissari was last, turning to return fire with a weapon I hadn't realized she was carrying. Her shot struck one of the approaching Concordat officers, sending them spinning in the low gravity. "Lissari, come on!" I called out, reaching toward her from the hatch. She backed toward us, still firing, when a shot caught her squarely in the chest. The impact threw her backward, her environmental suit sparking where the energy blast had penetrated. "No!" I lunged forward, grabbing her arm as she drifted past the hatch. With desperate strength, I pulled her inside, Zenith helping to drag her through the opening before sealing it behind us. "Get us out of here!" I shouted, as Zenith raced to the controls. The vessel surged upward, more energy blasts peppering its hull as we accelerated away from the surface. Through the viewport, I saw more Concordat vessels launching in pursuit. But my attention was focused on Lissari. Her environmental suit was compromised, a scorched hole revealing burned flesh beneath. Her breathing was shallow, her 3 eyes unfocused. "Stay with me," I urged, working to remove her damaged helmet. "We'll get you help. Just stay with me." "The medical kit," Zenith called from the pilot's seat. "Under the storage compartment. Hurry!" I found the kit and returned to Lissari's side, applying emergency treatments as best I could with my limited knowledge. The wound was severe. The energy weapon had burned through the suit and deep into her chest. "Milo," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The catalyst, what did you see?" "Not now," I said, trying to stabilize her condition. "Save your strength." "Tell me," she insisted, one hand weakly grasping my arm. "Did you see her? My mother?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I saw Alara. She was important to Elianthar." A faint smile touched Lissari's lips. "I knew it. The dreams, they weren't just visions. They were memories. Your memories." "Elianthar's memories," I corrected gently. "Not mine." "Same thing," she murmured, her eyes beginning to drift closed. "You just don't accept it yet." "Lissari, stay awake," I urged, applying another treatment patch to her wound. "We need to get you to a medical facility." "Too late for that," she whispered. "But not too late for you to finish what they started." Her 3 eyes suddenly focused with surprising clarity. "Vectar can't be allowed to destroy the Echo. The knowledge you carry, it's the only thing that can prevent the collapse. I'll find a way, I promised. But I need you with me. You're the one who understands all this, the Visari, the Echo Protocol. I'm just catching up." A soft laugh escaped her, followed by a grimace of pain. "You know more than you think. The memories are there. You just need to accept them." Her grip on my arm tightened. "Promise me. Promise you'll see this through." "I promise," I said, meaning it despite my reservations about what seeing this through might entail for my own identity. "Good," she whispered. Her eyes drifted to Zenith. "The coordinates. Give him the coordinates." Zenith glanced back from the pilot's seat, their scales a muted, somber gray. "Course already set," they assured her. "Rest now." Lissari's eyes returned to me, studying my face with a strange mixture of emotions: recognition, loss, hope. "You have her eyes," she murmured. "My mother always said you would have her eyes." Her hand slipped from my arm, her 3 eyes closing as she lost consciousness. The emergency medical scanner showed her life signs fading rapidly. "We need to get her to a medical facility immediately," I told Zenith. "Is there anywhere close enough?" "The nearest equipped for her species is on Jathera itself," Zenith replied grimly. "Even at maximum speed, we're hours away, and the Concordat vessels are still in pursuit." I looked down at Lissari's unconscious form, at the wound that was beyond my ability to treat. Something twisted inside me, grief, rage, and something deeper, something that felt like a memory trying to surface. "There's another option," I heard myself saying, my voice sounding different to my own ears. "The primary catalyst chamber on Thera's seventh moon. It has advanced medical technology." Zenith's scales rippled in surprise. "That facility was destroyed during the final conflict." "No," I said with inexplicable certainty. "It was hidden, shielded from detection." I moved to the navigation console, my fingers finding controls I shouldn't have known how to operate. "I can guide us there." "You're accessing his memories," Zenith observed quietly. "If it saves Lissari, I don't care whose memories they are," I replied, inputting coordinates that came to me as naturally as breathing. The vessel changed course, accelerating away from our pursuers. Through the viewport, I watched as Theros receded behind us, its massive form giving way to the emptiness of space. "The Concordate vessels are still following," Zenith reported. "But we're gaining distance. Their ships aren't designed for extended pursuit." "They don't need to follow us," I said grimly. "Vectar knows where we're going. He'll alert his forces throughout the system." "How could he know?" "Because he's been looking for the primary catalyst for decades." I monitored Lissari's life signs, applying another treatment patch to stabilize her condition. "It's the heart of the Echo Protocol, the central node that connects all Echo vessels. If he destroys it, he destroys any chance of the Vizari influence returning." "And you're leading us straight to it," Zenith noted, their galaxy eyes studying me with new wariness. "It's Lysari's only hope," I replied simply. "And you know as well as I do that the catalyst is more than just a memory repository. It's the key to stabilizing the energy belt." Zenith was silent for a long moment, their scales shifting through various patterns as they considered my words. "You're changing," they finally said. "The integration is happening whether you wanted it or not." "I know." I looked down at my hands, still my hands, but somehow they felt different, as if they'd held weapons and tools I'd never touched. "But I'm still me. For now, at least." "For now," Zenith echoed softly. The journey to Thera's seventh moon took just under an hour, during which Lissari's condition continued to deteriorate despite my best efforts. The wound was too severe, the damage extending beyond the physical injury into her energy pathways. As we approached the moon, a small, cratered body orbiting a larger satellite of Jathera's star, I directed Zenith to a specific crater near the northern pole. "There's nothing there," they objected, scanning the surface. "Exactly as it's meant to appear," I said. "Take us down. Altitude 100 meters. Bearing 270. Zenith complied, guiding the vessel to hover over what appeared to be an unremarkable section of the lunar surface. I moved to a control panel near the rear of the vessel, activating a sequence that sent out a specific signal pattern. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the surface below us shimmered, the illusion of solid rock dissolving to reveal a massive structure embedded within the crater, a complex of interconnected domes and towers that had been perfectly concealed from detection. "Incredible," Zenith whispered. "All this time." "Elian Thar designed the camouflage system himself," I said, the knowledge coming unbidden. "Quantum mimicry on a planetary scale. The facility only reveals itself to those carrying the correct genetic signature." A landing pad extended from one of the domes. A silent invitation. Zenith guided our vessel down, settling onto the platform with gentle precision. "We need to move quickly," I said, already gathering Lysari in my arms. "The medical chamber is in the central dome." "What about Concordate forces?" Zenith asked, as they sealed their environmental suit. "If Vectar knows about this place." "The facility has its own defenses," I assured them. "And the camouflage will reactivate once we're inside, concealing us again." We exited the vessel onto the landing pad, the moon's vacuum requiring our environmental suits. A doorway opened at our approach, leading into an airlock similar to the one at the broken tower. Once inside, the same process of atmosphere equalization allowed us to remove our helmets. The interior of the facility was pristine, as if it had been maintained daily rather than abandoned for centuries. Soft illumination activated as we moved through the corridors, the architecture familiar yet more refined than the broken tower. This was Visari design at its peak, before the devastation of war had forced compromises. I carried Lisari through a series of chambers, following instincts that weren't my own, to a large circular room, dominated by what appeared to be a more elaborate version of the crystal tree we'd seen in the broken tower. This one was intact, its energy branches extending to the ceiling in a complex web of light. "The primary catalyst," Zenith breathed, their scales reflecting the shifting colors of the crystal structure. "And our only hope of saving her," I said, laying Lisari gently on a platform adjacent to the catalyst. "Help me remove her suit." Together, we carefully extracted Lisari from her damaged environmental suit, revealing the full extent of her injury. The energy weapon had burned a hole through her chest, the wound edges cauterized but the internal damage severe. Her breathing was barely perceptible now, her 3 eyes closed and unresponsive. "What now?" Zenith asked. I approached a control interface unlike any I'd ever seen, yet my hands moved across it with practiced familiarity, activating systems and protocols I shouldn't have known existed. "The catalyst can repair physical damage," I explained as I worked. "It was designed to maintain echo vessels, but its principles apply to any compatible biology." The crystal tree responded to my commands, branches of energy extending toward Lisari's still form. They hovered above her, pulsing in sync with her fading heartbeat. "Initiating cellular regeneration," I said, the technical terms flowing naturally. "Repairing damaged tissue and energy pathways." The energy branches descended, enveloping Lisari in a cocoon of light. Within the luminous shell, I could see her body lifting slightly from the platform, suspended in the healing energies of the catalyst. "Will it work?" Zenith asked softly. "It has to," I replied, monitoring the process through the control interface. "Her injuries are severe, but within the catalyst's capabilities to repair." As the healing process continued, I became aware of the catalyst's presence in my own mind, stronger here than in the broken tower, more insistent. Memories and knowledge continued to surface, no longer in chaotic fragments, but in organized streams of information. I saw the creation of the Echo Protocol from its inception, Elian Thar's desperate plan to preserve not just Visari knowledge, but their ethical framework, their commitment to coexistence rather than dominance. I saw the selection process for compatible species, the careful encoding of memory patterns into genetic sequences designed to remain dormant for generations. And I saw the truth about Alara, not just Lisari's mother, but Elian Thar's partner in creating the protocol. She had volunteered to become the first vision, establishing the psychic links that would eventually guide echo vessels to activation when the time was right. But most importantly, I saw the collapse, the interdimensional rift that had been growing since before the final conflict, contained but never truly sealed by the energy belt Elian Thar had designed. I understood now why my engineering skills had brought me to Jathera. The containment system was failing, and only someone with Elian Thar's knowledge could repair it. "The vessel is changing," Zenith observed quietly, interrupting my thoughts. "The integration is accelerating." I looked up, realizing they were talking about me. "What do you mean?" Zenith gestured to a reflective panel on one of the control consoles. I stepped closer, seeing my reflection for the first time since the extraction chamber on the archives. My face was still recognizably mine, Milo Gray's features, Milo Gray's eyes. But there was something different in my expression, in the way I held myself, a confidence, a gravitas that hadn't been there before, and my eyes. They seemed to hold centuries of experiences I'd never lived. "I'm still me," I insisted, though uncertainty crept into my voice. I'm still Milo. For now, Zenith said again, their tone gentle but concerned. But the more you access his memories, his knowledge, the more I become him. I finished. I know. But right now, Elianthar's knowledge is the only thing keeping Lissari alive. I turned back to the control interface. And the only thing that might save this entire system from the collapse. Zenith moved to stand beside me, their galaxy eyes studying the data flowing across the interface. The rift is expanding more rapidly than predicted, isn't it? That's why you were brought here now. I nodded, pulling up detailed scans of the energy belt surrounding Jathera's star system. The containment field is failing at multiple points. The system was never meant to last this long without maintenance from someone who understood its principles. I pointed to several critical junctures where the energy patterns showed dangerous instabilities. At the current rate of degradation, we have days, maybe hours, before catastrophic failure. And if it fails completely, the rift expands exponentially. This entire sector will be consumed within a week. Billions of lives lost. Zenith's scales rippled with alarm. Can you repair it? Not alone. Not as I am. I glanced at the catalyst, where Lissari remained suspended in its healing energies. I need full access to Elianthar's knowledge, his understanding of interdimensional physics. Which means complete integration, Zenith concluded. Becoming him. Yes, the word hung between us, heavy with implications. And what happens to Milo Gray? I turned away, unable to answer. The truth was, I didn't know. The memories I'd accessed suggested various outcomes for Echo vessels, who underwent complete integration. Some maintained aspects of their original personality, merged with the Echo consciousness. Others were essentially overwritten, the original identity subsumed by the more powerful Visari mind. I don't know, I finally admitted. But if the choice is between my identity and billions of lives... A soft chime from the catalyst interrupted our conversation. The energy cocoon surrounding Lissari began to dissipate, the branches of light retracting back into the crystal tree. We moved quickly to her side. The wound in her chest was gone, replaced by new tissue slightly paler than the surrounding skin. Her breathing had stabilized, her life signs returning to normal parameters. It worked, Zenith said with obvious relief. Lissari's 3 eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on my face. Milo, she whispered. I'm here, I said, taking her hand. You're going to be all right. The catalyst healed you. She looked around, taking in our surroundings with growing wonder. The primary catalyst chamber, she breathed. It's real. You found it. He found it, I corrected gently. Elianthar. His memories led us here. Lissari studied my face with her 3 amber eyes, seeing the changes that Zenith had noted. You're integrating, she observed. The memories are becoming part of you. Yes, I acknowledged, but I'm still fighting to remain me. Why? The question was simple, direct, and it caught me off guard. Because I don't want to disappear, I said after a moment. I don't want Milo Gray to cease to exist. Lissari sat up slowly, her movements careful but steady. My mother believed that integration wasn't about erasure, but evolution. The Echo vessel and the Visari consciousness becoming something new, something that neither could have been alone. A comforting thought, I said. But the catalyst data suggests otherwise. Most Echo vessels lost their original identity entirely. Because they resisted, Lissari countered. They fought against the integration instead of guiding it. My mother saw a different path, one where the vessel remained conscious through the process, shaping the outcome. An alarm suddenly sounded from a console near the chamber entrance. Zenith moved to investigate, their scales shifting to an alarming red. Concordant vessels approaching, they reported. Multiple signatures. They've found us. Impossible, I said. The camouflage system has been compromised, Zenith finished. They're using a quantum resonance scanner calibrated to detect Visari technology. Vector must have recovered more from the archives than we realized. I moved to the security console, accessing the facility's defensive systems. How long do we have? Minutes, Zenith replied grimly. They're deploying landing craft. Ground forces will breach the facility soon. Can we escape in our vessel? Lisari asked, now fully alert. Zenith shook their head. They've established a containment perimeter. No ship could break through without heavy armaments, which we lack. Then we make our stand here, I said, activating the facility's automated defenses. The primary catalyst chamber has its own security protocols. We can hold them off long enough to— To what? Lisari interrupted. What's your plan, Milo? I hesitated, the competing instincts of Milo Gray and Elianthar pulling me in different directions. Milo wanted to run, to find some way to escape with Lisari and Zenith. Elianthar knew there was nowhere to run, not from the Concordat, and certainly not from the collapse. We need to repair the energy belt, I finally said. It's the only thing that matters now. If the containment field fails, everyone dies, including Vector and his purity zealots. And how do you propose to do that from here, while under siege? Zenith asked. I turned to the catalyst, its crystal structure pulsing with latent energy. The primary catalyst doesn't just store memories. It can project consciousness, transmit it across vast distances through quantum entanglement. I pulled up a schematic of the energy belt on the console. If I can establish a direct connection to the belt's control nodes, I can initiate a repair sequence remotely. But you need full integration to understand how, Lisari concluded. You need to become Elianthar completely. Yes, the word felt like a surrender. Lisari moved to stand beside me, her 3 eyes holding mine with unexpected intensity. My mother left me a message before she died. She said that when the time came, I would need to help you make a choice, the hardest choice any Echo vessel has ever faced. She placed her hand on my arm. But she also said I should tell you this. What is remembered? Lives. The phrase sent a shock through me. Recognition, understanding, hope. It was a Visari saying, one of their most sacred concepts. The belief that consciousness transcended physical form, that memory itself was a form of existence. She believed I could maintain my identity through integration, I realized. She believed you could guide the process, Lisari corrected. That you could choose what aspects of both consciousnesses would survive. Another alarm sounded, more urgent than the first. Breach in the outer perimeter, Zenith reported. Concordat forces have entered the facility. We're out of time, Lisari said, her grip on my arm tightening. Whatever you're going to do, it needs to happen now. I looked at the catalyst, its crystal branches seeming to reach toward me in invitation. The choice before me was impossible. Risk losing myself entirely, or watch as billions died when the containment field failed. No, not impossible, just terrifying. Activate the integration protocol, I told Zenith. Full neural resonance, maximum data transfer. Milo, are you certain? They hesitated at the control interface. Once initiated, the process cannot be reversed. I'm certain, I said, moving to stand before the catalyst. But I need you both to do something for me. Anything, Lisari promised. Talk to me. While the integration happens, remind me who Milo Gray is. I looked between them, trying to convey the importance of this request. Don't let me disappear completely. Zenith nodded, their scales shifting to a solemn blue. We will anchor you. Initiating integration protocol, they announced, activating the sequence. The catalyst responded immediately, its energy branches extending toward me like reaching hands. As they touched my skin, I felt a sensation unlike anything I'd experienced before, as if my consciousness was expanding, stretching beyond the confines of my physical form. Memories flooded in, no longer fragmented, but whole. Elianthar's life unfolded within my mind, his childhood on a Visari homeworld, long since destroyed, his education in sciences that humanity had yet to discover, his rise through the ranks of Visari Command until he became their foremost expert on interdimensional physics. I saw the discovery of the rift, a tear in the fabric of reality caused by early, reckless experiments with dimensional travel. I saw Elianthar's desperate work to contain it, to build a system that would prevent it from expanding and consuming populated worlds. And I saw his relationship with Alara develop from professional respect to deep connection, a bond that transcended conventional understanding of partnership. Together, they had created the Echo Protocol when it became clear the Visari civilization would not survive the war, not as a means of conquest or resurrection, but as a way to preserve the knowledge necessary to maintain the containment system. Milo, Lissari's voice reached me through the flood of memories. Tell me about Earth, about your home. I clung to the question like a lifeline, forcing myself to remember Chicago's skyline against a summer sunset. I grew up near Lake Michigan, I heard myself saying, the words distant and echoing. My apartment overlooks the water. On clear days, you can see all the way to the horizon. What made you become an engineer? Zenith asked, their voice joining Lissari's in grounding me. My father was a structural engineer, I replied, the memory of him showing me building plans when I was a child surfacing among Elianthar's memories of Visari architecture. He taught me to see the mathematics in everything, the golden ratio in flower petals, Fibonacci sequences in seashells. The integration continued, Elianthar's consciousness flowing into mine like two rivers merging. Yet somehow, anchored by the questions and my own determination, I remained aware of myself as a distinct entity, not fighting against the flood, but navigating within it. Neural integration at 70%, Zenith reported. Your brainwave patterns are stabilizing into a new configuration. The concordant forces have reached the central complex, Lissari warned. The automated defenses are slowing them, but they'll breach this chamber soon. I was barely aware of the external threat now. My consciousness had expanded to encompass the entire facility, connecting through the catalyst to the energy belt surrounding Jathera's star system. I could see the damage, the failing nodes, the thinning barriers, the growing instability. And I knew how to fix it. Integration complete, Zenith announced, their voice seeming to come from very far away. I opened my eyes that saw the world differently now, perceiving layers of reality that had been invisible to me before. The catalyst's energy branches still connected to my body, creating a conduit between my consciousness and the containment system, light years away. Milo, Lissari asked cautiously, are you still there? I turned to her, seeing her not just with human eyes, but with Visari perception, the complex energy patterns that made up her being, the genetic markers of her vision lineage, the subtle resonance that connected her to the catalyst and, through it, to me. Yes, I said, my voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been present before. And also, no, I am both. More than either. Elianthar, she whispered. That name is part of me now, I acknowledged. But I am still Milo Gray. I am a continuation of both. A loud explosion shook the chamber, the doors buckling inward from some powerful impact. They're almost through, Zenith warned, their scales flickering with alarm. Whatever you're going to do is already happening, I assured them, turning back to the catalyst. Through its connection, I was reaching out to the energy belt, rewriting its protocols, strengthening the containment field with knowledge that spanned 2 lifetimes and 2 civilizations. The doors to the chamber burst open. Concordant forces poured in, weapons raised. Behind them strode Vectar, his pale face contorted with a mixture of triumph and hatred. The Echo Abomination, he hissed, seeing me connected to the catalyst. Destroy it! Wait! Lissari stepped between us, her 3 eyes blazing with determination. "You don't understand what's happening. The energy belt is failing. He's the only one who can repair it." "More lies," Vectar sneered. "The Visari are gone, their legacy one of destruction and chaos. We will not allow their influence to poison this galaxy again." He gestured to his forces. "Secure the female and the archive curator. Terminate the Echo vessel." The soldiers advanced cautiously, clearly wary of the catalyst and its swirling energies. I could have activated the chamber's inner defenses, could have struck back with the power now flowing through me. But violence was not the answer, had never been the answer. As both Milo Gray and Alionthar understood, "Overseer Vectar," I said, my voice resonating with harmonics that made several soldiers hesitate. "The containment field around this sector is failing. If it collapses completely, the interdimensional rift will expand exponentially, consuming everything within light years, including your precious Purity Concordate." "Deception," Vectar spat. "The energy belt is a simple gravitational stabilizer. Nothing more." "Is it?" I gestured to the control interface, where data from the containment system was streaming in real time. "See for yourself. The readings don't lie." Vectar hesitated, his ice-blue eyes flickering to the display. Even he couldn't ignore the evidence of catastrophic system failure. "This proves nothing," he said, but with less conviction. "The Echo could be manipulating the data. Then verify it independently," I challenged. "Send your own probes to the energy belt. You'll find exactly what I'm showing you. A containment field on the verge of collapse, and with it, the safety of every world in this sector." Vectar's expression wavered, doubt creeping in for the first time. "If what you say is true—" "It is," Lesari interjected. "And he's already working to repair it. The catalyst is allowing him to interface directly with the energy belt's control systems." "Impossible," Vectar objected. "No consciousness could span such distances." "The Visari could," Zenith said quietly. "That's why you fear them so much, isn't it? Not because of what they did, but because of what they could do, what they understood that we still don't." Vectar's pale face flushed with anger. "They nearly destroyed the galaxy with their arrogance. Their experiments tore holes in reality itself." "Yes," I acknowledged, the memories of those mistakes crystal clear in my mind now. "The early Visari were reckless in their exploration of dimensional physics. They created the rift that threatens us now." I met his gaze steadily. "But they also created the system that has contained it for centuries. The system that I am now repairing." As if to emphasize my point, the catalyst pulsed with new energy, its crystal branches extending further as I channeled more power into the containment field. Through our connection, I could feel the energy belt responding, the failing nodes coming back online, the barriers strengthening. "The containment field is stabilizing," I reported. "But the damage was extensive. It will take time to complete the repairs." Vectar moved closer, his eyes fixed on the data display. I could see the conflict within him, his lifetime of hatred for anything Visari warring with the evidence before him. "If you destroy me now," I said quietly, "the repairs will fail. The containment field will collapse within hours. Everything you fought to protect will be lost." "Let him finish, Overseer," one of the Concordate officers urged. "We can verify the data from our own systems. If he's telling the truth." "And if he's lying," Vectar snapped. "If this is all an elaborate deception to re-establish Visari influence in our sector, then you can still destroy me afterward," I said simply. "I'm not asking for freedom or amnesty. I'm asking for time to complete the repairs, to save billions of lives, including yours." Vectar was silent for a long moment, his pale eyes studying me with calculated intensity. Finally, he stepped back, gesturing for his forces to lower their weapons. "Continue the repairs," he said coldly. "But know that every action, every line of code you transmit, is being monitored by our systems. At the first sign of deception, I will personally ensure your termination. Understood, I replied, turning back to the catalyst. With the immediate threat neutralized, I was able to focus fully on the task at hand. The energy belt was responding to my adjustments, the containment field strengthening minute by minute. But there was more to be done. Not just repairs, but improvements. With my unique perspective, human engineering intuition combined with Visari theoretical knowledge, I could see solutions that neither Milo Gray nor Elianthar could have conceived alone. As I worked, I was aware of Lisari and Zenith standing protectively nearby, and of Vektar's forces maintaining their vigilant watch. The Concordat overseer himself paced the chamber, occasionally consulting with his technical specialists, who were indeed verifying my work. Hours passed in this tense standoff. The repairs progressed steadily, the containment field growing stronger, more stable. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I felt the last node come online, the last barrier seal. "It's done," I announced, the catalyst's energy branches beginning to retract from my body. "The containment field is stable. The rift is secure." Vektar approached, his pale face unreadable. "Our systems confirm the energy belt has been repaired," he admitted grudgingly. "The anomalous readings have ceased." "Then our agreement is fulfilled," I said, stepping away from the catalyst. "What happens now is up to you." Vektar studied me with those cold eyes, calculation evident in his gaze. "The Echo vessel has served its purpose," he finally said. "But the Visari influence remains a threat that cannot be allowed to persist." "So execution, then?" I asked calmly. "No!" Lisari moved to stand beside me. "He saved billions of lives. Without him, the containment field would have collapsed. Is this how the Concordat repays such service?" Vektar seemed unmoved. "The purpose of the Purity Concordat is to ensure that Visari influence never again threatens our galaxy. The Echo vessel represents the most dangerous form of that influence, a living, conscious carrier of Visari memory and knowledge." "And yet," Zenith interjected, their scales shifting thoughtfully, "this particular Echo used that knowledge to save, rather than destroy. Perhaps there is more nuance to this situation than your doctrines account for." "The doctrines exist for a reason," Vektar snapped. "The last time an Echo was allowed to roam free, an entire system was destabilized. We cannot risk such catastrophe again." I raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "May I offer a third option?" Vektar's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What option?" "Neither execution nor freedom, at least, not as you define it." I gestured to the catalyst. "This facility contains technology that can selectively modify memory patterns. It could restructure the Echo consciousness within me." "Meaning what, exactly?" Vektar demanded. "Meaning I could retain the knowledge necessary to maintain the containment field, while removing the aspects of Visari consciousness that you find threatening." I met his gaze steadily. I would remain Milo Gray, human engineer, with specific technical knowledge but without the full Visari identity or memories. Vektar considered this, clear skepticism in his expression. "And who would perform this convenient restructuring? You?" "No. You." I nodded toward the control interface. "Your technical specialist could oversee the process, define exactly what knowledge remains and what is removed." This gave him pause. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the possibility of not just neutralizing a threat, but potentially gaining access to controlled Visari knowledge. "You would submit to this willingly?" he asked, suspicion evident in his tone. "With conditions," I replied. "First, Lisari and Zenith are granted full amnesty and allowed to leave unharmed. Second, I retain enough knowledge to continue maintaining the containment field. It will require periodic adjustments to remain stable. And third, I am permitted to return to Earth once the process is complete." Return to Earth? Vectar seemed surprised by this request. Why? I smiled slightly. Because despite everything that's happened, despite the integration of Elianthar's consciousness with my own, Earth is still my home. And there's a cat named Photon who's probably knocked everything off my shelves by now. The simple, human reason seemed to catch Vectar off guard. For the first time, I saw something like uncertainty in his expression, as if he was being forced to confront the humanity that existed alongside the Visari consciousness he so feared. These terms are negotiable, he finally said. The Council will need to approve any final arrangement. Of course, I agreed. But I trust they'll see the logic in a solution that addresses their security concerns while preserving the knowledge necessary to prevent catastrophe. Vectar nodded stiffly, then turned to his officers. Secure the facility, establish communication with Council headquarters, and bring in our technical specialist to examine this catalyst. As the concordant forces moved to carry out his orders, Lysari approached me, her 3 amber eyes filled with concern. Are you sure about this? She asked softly. The restructuring process, you would lose much of what you've gained. Parts of who you are now would be erased. Not erased, I corrected gently. Transformed. Just as I was transformed by the integration, I took her hand, feeling the connection between us, a connection that spanned 2 lifetimes. What is remembered? Lives. Even if the memories take new forms. You won't remember her, will you? Lysari's voice was barely above a whisper. My mother. What she meant to Elianthar. Some connections transcend memory, I said, surprising myself with the certainty I felt. Some things we know without knowing how we know them. I smiled at her. I think I'll always recognize your eyes. A tear slipped from her central eye, trailing down her lavender cheek. I wished for so long to find you, to understand the dreams, the visions. And now we both move forward, I finished for her, carrying what matters with us. What will you do on Earth? She asked. After everything you've experienced, everything you've become? I thought about it for a moment, the answer coming from the part of me that was still very much Milo Gray. I think I'll open a bookstore, or maybe a Picho restaurant. I smiled at her confused expression. It depends on whether the bank will accept an ancient AI as a co-signer. Her laughter was worth whatever sacrifices lay ahead, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the chamber, drawing curious glances from the concordant officers. Will I see you again? She asked when her laughter subsided. I hope so, I replied honestly. The galaxy isn't as vast as it seems, especially for those who know where to look. I glanced at the catalyst, its crystal structure now dormant, but still radiant with potential. And some connections never truly break, even across light years. In the days that followed, negotiations with the Purity Concordate progressed with surprising speed. Perhaps it was the undeniable evidence of the repaired containment field. Or perhaps it was simply pragmatism, winning out over ideology. Whatever the reason, the Council eventually agreed to my terms, with modifications that I found acceptable. Lysari and Zenith were granted amnesty, though with restrictions on their future access to Visari sites. I would retain specific technical knowledge related to the containment field, along with a carefully defined subset of Visari science that the Council deemed non-threatening. And I would be permitted to return to Earth, though with periodic check-ins to ensure the restructured consciousness remained stable. The restructuring process itself was less traumatic than I had feared. The catalyst, designed for precisely this kind of consciousness manipulation, allowed for remarkably nuanced adjustments. What emerged was still me, still Milo Gray, but with expanded understanding and specific knowledge that had once belonged to Elianthar. Gone were the full memories of his life, his struggles, his loves and losses. But the essence remained, a sense of purpose, a commitment to protection, and a deep appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. And somewhere, beneath conscious thought, a recognition of three amber eyes that had once looked at me, across centuries. On the day of my departure, Lissari came to see me off. We stood in the docking bay of the archives, where a transport vessel waited to take me back to Earth. "The Concordat is establishing a permanent monitoring station at the primary catalyst chamber," she told me. "Vectar insists it's necessary to prevent any unauthorized access to Visari technology." "Probably wise," I acknowledged, though I suspect they'll learn more from studying the facility than they anticipated. Some knowledge has a way of changing those who seek to control it. "Speaking from experience?" she asked with a small smile. "Something like that." I adjusted the strap of my duffel bag, the same one I'd arrived with, though it felt like a lifetime ago. "What about you? What will you do now?" "Continue my mother's work," she said simply. "There are other echo vessels out there, dormant or partially activated. They'll need guidance when the time comes." "And Zenith?" "Return to the archives with full reinstatement of their curator status. Apparently, helping save the sector from interdimensional collapse earns one considerable professional goodwill." Her three eyes crinkled with amusement. "They send their regards, by the way, and a request that you name a particularly complex dish after them if you open that restaurant." I laughed. "I'll keep that in mind." The departure announcement echoed through the docking bay. Our time was almost up. "I have something for you," Lissari said, reaching into a pocket of her tunic. She withdrew a small crystal shard, similar in composition to the catalyst, but much smaller. "A memory crystal. It contains personal records, things that weren't included in the official data you retained." I took it carefully, feeling a slight resonance as it touched my skin. "What kind of records?" "Stories," she said softly. "About my mother, about Alayan Thar, about their work together, and other things." Her three eyes met mine with that intensity I'd come to recognize. "The Concordat doesn't know about it. Their scans won't detect it as anything but an inert decorative object." "Thank you," I said, tucking the crystal into my jacket pocket. "I'll keep it safe." "Don't just keep it safe," she urged. "When you're ready, when you're settled back on Earth, let it show you what was saved, what was remembered." The final boarding call sounded. It was time to go. "Until we meet again," I said. The phrase coming naturally, though, I couldn't have said whether it originated from Milo or Elianthar. "Until then," she agreed. As I boarded the transport that would take me home, I felt a curious mixture of loss and possibility. I was returning to Earth, changed in ways I couldn't fully articulate, carrying knowledge and perspective that would forever alter how I saw the universe and my place within it. Yet, I was still Milo Gray. Still the engineer who liked puzzles and stargazing and his ridiculous cat. Still the man who sometimes forgot to water his plants, and who could spend hours debating the perfect noodle-to-broth ratio in proper pho. And now, I was something more. Not a Lionthar reborn, but a continuation of what he had begun. A new chapter in a story that spanned centuries and light years. As the transport lifted off, I felt the small crystal in my pocket, a tangible connection to everything that had happened, everything I had been and might yet become. Someday soon, I would let it show me what it contained. But for now, I was content to simply carry it with me, a reminder that some things transcend memory, identity, even time itself. What is remembered? Lives. And as Earth grew larger in the viewport, its familiar blue and green a welcome sight after so much strangeness, I found myself smiling at the thought of what lay ahead. A bookstore, perhaps, or a restaurant, or something else entirely. The possibilities, like the stars themselves, were endless.